A word of warning, this podcast explores graphic and disturbing stories and includes some strong language. It therefore may not be suitable for our young listeners or other folks who may find it disturbing. Hello and welcome to True Crime News, the podcast covering high-profile and under-the-radar cases from across the country every week. I'm your host, Ana Garcia, and our case this week. They wrap their cell phones with aluminum foil. They wear all black. They are highly educated computer science experts. They are vegan, and many of them have transitioned into women, partly because they believe estrogen makes for a clearer mind. Police say they are investigating this alleged cult known as the Zizians in connection with 4 murders in 3 states. 5 members of this group, including the suspected leader, have been arrested and are being held on a variety of charges from trespassing to murder. So who are the Zizians and how many of them are there? We're recording this on Friday, February 28th of 2025. Our guest today is the one and only Ashleigh Banfield, an amazing journalist, the host of Banfield on News Nation. Ashleigh also has a new true crime podcast, Drop Dead Serious, which drops, I believe, every Thursday. Ashleigh, welcome to the podcast. It's so exciting to have you.
Anna, what a treat. I'm a big fan of yours, like mad fan, and I just love the way your mind works, honestly. But I trust that you are not a Zizian.
No, I am not a Zizian. No, I don't have the mad computer skills to qualify for this group.
Me neither.
It is just such a pleasure. You are like, I said this before on social media, you're the queen of true crime. So we are just so honored to have you. And you're perfect for this case. I can't wait to hear your comments on this. This is like crazy making. As I say to everyone, y'all have to buckle in for this podcast because this is going to be a bumpy one, okay? It's going to be all over the place. I believe that it's no surprise that this group was born in California. We're like the birthplace of cults. Don't we historically? I mean, that's just who we are in California.
And I can't figure that out because typically my thought process is that if you're stuck and it's cold outside and you can't get out of the house, you just start to go stir crazy. And what a perfect, petri dish for letting your mind go to sort of cult thinking. But in California, there's so much to do. You can always be outside. The weather's great. What the heck is wrong with these folks?
I do not know. So the Zizians have a lot of the hallmarks of classic cults. And, we're saying alleged cult here because we're still figuring out who they are. But based on the reporting, there's, some similarities that we see with cults, picking on the vulnerable, people who are trans and transitioning, who may feel isolated and looking for a community. They pick on the wealthy. Poor people do not have time for cults. I've always said that. The working class doesn't have, right? Doesn't have time.
2 jobs, trying to raise their kids, trying to make ends meet, deal with the car that's broken. Yeah, you're right. When you have too much time on your hands or you're stuck inside because it's cold outside, that's when the trouble starts.
Yeah. So they really have been looking for wealthy people or young people of means. Their families have means, or they're making a lot of money in tech. Also, they've been looking at people at tech because sometimes they live in the shadows and online in a virtual world with virtual relationships. And then they build a community through this group, the Zizians. And then, the leader is accused of isolating them, depriving them of sleep, and then again, making them vulnerable to their teachings. So up until a few weeks ago, no one had even heard of the Zizians, right? I mean, I'd never heard of them.
I hadn't. Yeah, no, I hadn't. And I try to track this stuff, quite frequently. And usually they make pretty big headlines. So I am surprised that they flew under the radar. But I think it might be because so much of what was happening was in so many different states. And so tying it all together took some time.
Yeah, it's like the Lori Vallow case, right? Mm-hmm. So many things were happening and no one could see the big picture and step back and look, hold on a second, are all these suspicious deaths related?
Correct.
And so we're kind of seeing that with the Zizians. So this is a very complicated case and it involves a series of murders. So I think what we're going to do here, so everyone can follow along, is we'll talk about the Zizians and then we'll go chronologically through the murders because you'll see how then all the dots start to connect. Because I don't know how else to attack it because there's just so much information and so many people involved. Does that work for you, Ashleigh?
Yeah, not only does it work, it's super helpful because I'll tell you that even my production team, we meet every day to discuss the stories for our News Nation show, which, by the way, Banfield at 10 o'clock at night on News Nation. Plug. We were talking about this case for an hour and trying to make sense of it because pieces had come in, pieces were missing. It was complicated and it didn't make sense and there didn't seem to be a comfortable narrative. And if I'm going on the air, I need to tell a story, right? I can't tell pieces and leave you frustrated. And I remember feeling in that first production meeting, I am frustrated because I cannot get the narrative. So I'm gonna watch as you do it.
Okay, very good. I'm up to the task. Yes.
But by the way, I will say I do have the narrative now, but it was not an easy task.
Oh, it's fractured. It's without doubt fractured. And there are a lot of things we're not going to be able to answer, but that's one of the beauties of the podcast is we can talk about cases because we think a lot's going on and other things will come out later. So let's talk about this. We have 6 people dead in total. We have 2 alleged members. We have 4 murder victims and at least 5 people being held in jails across the country.
For various different reasons, like not necessarily for murder, some for protesting and some for trespassing and other things that they have these like, DNA ties, it seems like almost to the alleged perpetrators of murder.
Yes, and that has to be very clear. Very limited on the murder charges, even though we have 4 people who have been murdered, according to police. So let's start with the Zizians here. Okay, every cult has a charismatic leader, and that's classic. So this person will be the beacon for people to follow. And in this case, police say that 34-year-old Jack Lasota, whose nickname is Ziz, that's where the Zizians came from, has been arrested and has been identified as the leader of this alleged group, this alleged cult called the Zizians. Now, authorities claim that the group has ties to murders in California, Pennsylvania, and Vermont, including the murder of a Border Patrol agent.
That's where it got really confusing, right? Because we get all this news about border activity and we don't think cult killings. We think there's some sort of issue with illegal immigration, et cetera. That's why that part stayed under my radar for quite a while.
Yes. Again, because no one could connect the dots on all of this. So let's start here with Ziz Lasota, okay? Central to everything here. Described as a programmer and a coder, degree in computer science from the University of Alaska, claims to have interned at NASA. NASA has not confirmed this. But again, we're dealing with incredibly intelligent people here. Ziz moved to the Bay Area, identifies as a woman, and around 2016 started blogging about fears of artificial intelligence, personal theories about how the brain works. And that's when things are starting to develop. And this interest in theories and groups related to rationalists. I had to look this one up.
Me too.
Right?
I thought, wait, I thought we were talking Zizians, and then suddenly rationalists come into the picture. And it's an unusual group too.
Yeah, exactly. There are a few groups in the Bay Area, and I think the easiest way to describe it is they believe in logical, rational thinking that is not emotionally biased. And how to achieve that, it's all very philosophical. Okay. So I, of course, think that's a huge disconnect because everything that everyone here is accused of or connected to could not be more illogical.
Or emotional.
Yes.
It seems to me like there was a lot of frantic behavior that dated the actual killings, or were part of and parcel of the actual killings. Certainly didn't sound like anything that was scientific or logically planned. It just sounded like a freak out.
Yeah. Like when they gouge out someone's eye and then stab him with a samurai. We're going to get to that because that will be the first murder that police are investigating. Okay, so I still want to tell you a little bit about the Zizians so you could figure out how they're evolving and growing in California. So, as Ziz is writing, attracting people from around the globe to her thoughts. And now there is a pivotal moment. And you mentioned, Ashleigh, that this protest that's very important. November 19, Bay Area, the Zizians, basically Ziz and 3 others, are arrested during a protest of a rationalist group. why is this important? This is where I love the details, because the fingerprints that are taken at the time of these arrests will be pivotal when we deal with Ziz faking her own death. And then, right? So no.
And you just blew everyone's mind because wait, hold it. What?
Right. Exactly.
Faked death. What? I thought we were in protest mode, but by the way, I think there's a critical piece here. And that is that, Ziz, Jack, was getting really wound up in the rationalists movement, loved it, thought it was great, really dug in deep. And then I don't know what turned, Anna, but something turned and Jack Ziz started to disagree and get aggro about the rationalists. Hence, now he and she and others are protesting the rationalists. They're not with the rationalists. They're protesting the rationalists.
Yeah, and it got violent. They had to and that's why they were arrested. And so ordinarily a protest in the Bay Area, I used to work in the Bay Area. There are multiple protests in the Bay Area on all sorts of things every single day. So I don't think that would ordinarily become huge news, but it will be important first in identifying people and then the connections that people have. So everyone put a pin on this because it'll be very interesting. All right. So this is the emergence of the Zizians, if you will, their first public, truly organized event. And also their signature is emerging. They dress in black cloaks. They wear the signature mask favored by Anonymous and some anarchists, the Guy Fawkes mask. They use box trucks. Very important. Remember the box trucks, because this will be central that we will see at several crime scenes. When it comes to money, you never want to learn lessons the hard way. And that brings us to today's sponsor, Acorns. Acorns is a financial wellness app that makes it easy to start saving and investing in your future. You don't need to be an expert. Acorns will recommend a diversified portfolio that matches you and your money goals. You don't need to be rich. Acorns lets you get started with the spare money that you've got right now, even if all you've got is spare change. You also don't need a ton of time. You can create your Acorns account and start investing in just 5 minutes. Investing is something that's very easy to pull off. I know it is one of those things that you think, oh, I'll just figure that out next month. But with Acorns, it's easy to do it right now. Sign up now and join the over 13 million all-time customers who have already saved and invested over $22 billion with Acorns. Head to acorns.com/truecrime or download the Acorns app to get started. Paid non-client endorsement compensation provides incentive to positively promote Acorns. Tier 1 compensation provided. Investing involves risk. Acorn Advisors LLC is an SEC registered investment advisor. View important disclosures at acorns.com/truecrime. So the Zizians are born, and they are mostly computer scientists in their 20s and 30s. They all seem to have met online. They have these shared anarchist beliefs. Ziz reportedly used a tactic of sleep deprivation that I mentioned a little earlier, but this one was an odd one. It's where she would force them to sleep with one eye open because she believed that there were, hemispheres to the brain and that you could shut off half your brain, but keep one eye open, which you cannot sleep like that. This is no logic. No.
Anybody just give it a try now and just see how relaxing it is.
Exactly. So you can see that this is like a form of indoctrination.
Crazy.
Okay. So at this point, Ziz decides that they should all live on boats in the San Francisco Bay Area because rents are high. This is true. This really wasn't working. She ends up faking her death, according to police. Claims to have fallen overboard in August of 2022. Again, really pivotal moment here. Coast Guard searching for her. Obviously, they didn't recover the body because she wasn't dead, and her family has her declared dead. So as far as anyone knows, Ziz Lasota is dead, but she's not dead.
Yeah. And also just let me go here for a second because I am a boater. I'm from Canada, and I go there every year. I go back to my family, and I live on an island. And so the only means of transportation is boating. If I want milk, eggs, or butter, I got to get in the boat. My kids at 6 years old were getting in the boat to go over and see their friends. So I'm an avid boater and a very knowledgeable boater. And can I tell you that if you think it is expensive to live on land, boating is not the choice, because it is the most expensive and frustrating, possible choice. So now I'm starting to wonder about the actual intelligence.
The logic or lack of it, right?
Yep.
Right. Agreed. So she's declared dead, but police say Ziz was alive and well and now in Vallejo, California, with 3 others that were from the protest. Very important. They are living in a commune, living in their box trucks, and they're renting land from a gentleman named Curtis Lind. He's in his 80s. It is now November 2022. Really important. 3 months after the faking of her death. Curtis will be victim number 1 in the series of murders.
But he'll also be a victim later. He gets victimized twice.
Yes, it's horrible. It's horrible what is done to this man. So his attackers gouge out his eye with a knife.
But first, they become attackers, right? Because they're on his land. I think he starts to be very uncomfortable, understandably, given how they dress, given how they operate, given what they do. These box trucks are very odd. And doesn't he sort of start saying, look, there's a rent issue. I think there's probably a lot more than just a rent issue. And that's where the acrimony starts between Curtis and the Zizians?
Yes, because they're not paying rent. He gets a judgment against them for $60,000 for back rent for being on his land. They're not going to pay it. And so he goes to the sheriff and has an eviction set up for November 15th. But 2 days prior to that, on November 13th, he gets contacted by his so-called deadbeat renters, and they say there's some kind of a water leak. Can you come out to where we are? And so Curtis goes out there.
The old water leak.
The old water leak. Yeah, with the box trucks, right? Mm-hmm. Well, I think Curtis probably knew something was up because he was carrying his gun with him, and they jumped him. This is according to Curtis, the police reports of what happened. He gets jumped and seriously assaulted. I mean, they stuck a knife in his eye.
Well, wasn't this the samurai sword attack where they stabbed him? And I mean, it was hideous. By the way, when I was reading through this originally, I thought, well, this must be where Curtis dies. And surprise, surprise, it's not.
I can't believe that he survives this.
I can't either.
I cannot believe this. The man, because the samurai sword went in through the chest, out through the stomach. And so he manages to get his weapon and he fires. He ends up killing in self-defense one of the people there, Emma Bornahan.
Oh, remember her? Wasn't she one of the people at the protest? Remember protesting the rationalist movement, the barricading? She was one of the ones arrested. So now she's suddenly there at this incident of this jumping and attacking and samurai sword stabbing, and she's the one who gets shot.
Mm-hmm. And she's killed. Also, 2 other associates, Alexander Latham and Suri Dow, they were also, one of them was injured. Both of them were charged with, of all things, Emma's death. Because
this made sense to me. And
I'll let you take this one. Yeah.
This one. I think most people would say, wait a minute.
Yes.
This is Curtis, the victim who shot in self-defense. How are these other 2 attackers who did not shoot Emma dead? How are they charged with murder? And here's how it works. It's called felony murder, usually. I'm assuming this was felony murder because there was a felony that was allegedly being committed against Curtis by these 2 whose names are Alexander Latham and Suri Dow, and someone died as a result of the felony. It didn't happen to be the person they were attacking who died as the result of the felony. It happened to be one of their friends who died as a result of the felony. But it doesn't matter who dies as the result of the felony. If you are committing a felony and someone dies, you get tagged with murder. So if these allegations are true, it means that Alexander Latham and Suri Dow were committing a felony against poor Curtis, the landlord, poor Curtis, the landlord, was packing heat and shot in self-defense, and their pal got killed. They get tagged with the felony murder.
And of course, the witness to all of this will be Curtis, who survives. He
Thank
ends
God.
up getting somehow to a neighbor, literally with blood gushing everywhere. He survives it. He's like 81 years old when this happens. He survives this, but he loses an eye. So, now,
And I'm sure he loses a lot more, meaning mobility, ability to live his life out all the way he used to. Sounds like he was kind of a guy that was, in pretty good health, living on his own and managing this kind of a property. So I think we can say some people minimize the fact he was attacked and survived. This man was brutalized and should never have survived and did. But I'm sure his surviving life was terrible until it became worse.
Right. He would be in grave danger, police would say, from the people who allegedly attacked him. And when the two Zizians are arrested, their supporters start rallying and saying, wait a minute, the real victims here are the two Zizians that you have arrested, and you're picking on them. This is what they said.
Picking on them. Boy.
Picking on them because they are neurodiverse, which is another way of saying they think differently.
Yeah, I mean, it could be all sorts of things. Neurodiversion is now often used for people who have severe ADHD, maybe autism, something on the spectrum. But, I don't think personally from my 37 years of journalism that police go looking for people with special needs to pick on them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially when the witness is bleeding from the eye, bleeding from the gut, and barely survives, an attempted murder.
And with everyone's advanced degrees here, I'm sorry, they should know that murder is not only illogical, but it is wrong. It is absolutely wrong. Why? Because you're being evicted? This is the solution to your problem?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. I'm surprised, actually. I've got to be honest, like the whole felony murder of Emma, that made sense to me. But what didn't make sense was where's the attempted murder of Curtis? And not just for the two, right? The Alexander, Latham, and Surrey Dow. Jack was there. Jack was on the scene. Why didn't Jack get hauled into that? And as a conspiracy, as part of the conspiracy, I'm seeing it through headlines only. I was not there. As a conspiracy, I don't understand how all of them weren't charged with conspiracy to, conspiracy to an attempted murder because Curtis survived this time.
Yes. It's so strange that Ziz was apparently there, according to police. But wait a minute, was it Ziz? Because Ziz had faked her death months earlier.
Again, Ziz Jack, Jack, and we have to say her. That was the chosen pronoun. For those who listen who are frustrated by all that, there's also a weird story there. I'm not so sure that Jack Lasota was actually trans in the classical sense, right? Because trans people feel it from the moment that, they're cognizant. I feel different. I don't feel that I don't feel my body matches who I am inside. I feel like Jack, through some of the, proclamations anyway, was choosing it for a scientific reason because it suited his philosophies that this estrogen makes you more clear. I don't know, whatever it was. I feel like it's unfair to sort of lump, trans people who have quite a battle on their hands, especially now, right? Politically, oh my God, with people who are bananas and choosing maybe to be trans. And I don't know how many in this group may really be trans and associated or identified or were endeared to the group because of the fact that they might have been trans. But I'm not so sure about this Jack character. I feel like Jack, was very conniving and very strategic and had these very bizarre philosophies about left and right hemispheres of your brain. One's male, one's female, and they're at war. So I'm not so sure that Jack really was trans before she, because again, I think that should be reserved for people who really are, proclaimed that I want to use female pronouns. Do you know what I'm saying? I just want to be really mindful that there may be a group out there that is very offended by the notion that someone is co-opting what really is their reality, their world, their struggle for their crimes.
Well, I would be very concerned about the specific targeting of trans people.
Yes.
to try and get them to
worm
join
their way in. Yeah, exactly.
And
use that and sucker them in to something that Jack really isn't. I'm not so sure that Jack really is. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that I just don't know. I just don't know enough about Jack Lasota, and I think we will learn more. But, I look at every person here, especially when you hear the stories from their parents about how upset they were when their young adults basically started shutting down, getting rid of their phones, telling their parents they weren't going to communicate with them anymore, and literally disappeared. And so many of the people who have been arrested, their parents had filed missing persons reports about them. But
Not
because
unusual.
Right?
Not unusual, right? With cult activity, this is kind of like, I could recite it by rote, how so many of these young people, and not always young people, fall into this and then disconnect from their life and their reality and their loved ones and those who can pull them back.
Yes. And that, to me, is so much of the sadness here, in addition to all of the people who have lost their lives in all of this. It may be February, but most people are still doing their best to keep those New Year's resolutions going. If you're in debt, I have a great resolution for you to consider. Make this the year that you get on top of your finances. The first step is to contact PDS Debt for a personalized debt solution. If you're making payments every month on your debt and your balances aren't going down, PDS has the solution for you. Everyone with $10,000 or more in eligible debt qualifies, and there is no minimum credit score required. Bad and fair credit is accepted. Save more while paying off your debt in a fraction of the time. Being in debt can feel scary and overwhelming. So where do you start? How do you climb out of it? But remember, you're not alone. PDS Debt can help. Make this the year you take control of your debt. Get a free debt analysis right now at pdsdebt.com/truecrime. It only takes 30 seconds. That's pdsdebt.com/truecrime. pdsdebt.com/truecrime. So 1 month after this vicious attack on Curtis, the landowner, it will now be New Year's Eve, December 31st, 2022. 2 people in Pennsylvania, a husband and wife, are murdered. Richard Zajko, who was 71, his wife Rita, 69, killed in the upscale community of Chester Heights. What connection do they have to the Zizians? They are the parents to a reputed Zizian member, Michelle Zajko.
Mm-hmm. What's weird, though, about this, I feel like no matter whether the investigators knew that Michelle was a Zizian, I feel like just by the very fact that she's part of this, like she's the daughter and there might be something untoward. Like I feel like the investigation didn't go deep enough early on into Michelle because she wasn't, well, I think she was arrested, right? But I don't think she was charged with murder.
No, it would be some time, actually. It was all very strange. And Wired has done an amazing job of researching and reporting this story. They've really done an incredible job. I know there are many news outlets that have, but Wired really has done a fabulous job. And I highly recommend that you read this article if you can. And according to Wired, they said that Michelle had grown up wealthy and privileged. I mean, just look at the outside of the house. It's gorgeous, right? The only child of Richard and Rita. Now, Michelle is trans, and she had been posting about growing anti-trans sentiment that she was very concerned about. And in 2019, she moves to California, and that's when she connects with Ziz and the Zizians. And I just want to tell you a little bit more about Michelle, so then we can get into what, as you said, Ashleigh, what the cops connected and didn't connect, just as a pure murder investigation. Mm-hmm. So according to her own LinkedIn, she's got a master's from Temple University. She interned at NASA. Do we see a connection?
Oh, how about that? Oh, what do you know? NASA.
Again, we're waiting on confirmation from NASA. Okay, so the Pennsylvania State Troopers say this is how the parents died. Shot in the head, with a 9mm gun. Wired reports that a Ring camera across the street captures a car pulling up at 11:29 p.m. Remember, New Year's Eve at midnight. Mm-hmm. 2 people enter the house. 2 minutes later, it sounds like someone shouts, "Mom," followed by, "Oh my God." And 9 minutes later, they leave. Okay. So one would think we would be looking at the only daughter, the only child, just to even communicate with her, right? And figure things out.
The only person who would use the word mom if they really feel like that's a potential, decipherable utterance on the Ring cam. At the very, very least, it would prompt police to say, sounds like mom, so let's just check it out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So again, Wired has done a great job of reporting on this. According to their reporting, 3 days later, Pennsylvania state troopers find Michelle. With Ziz.
Jack Ziz. Yeah.
So the state troopers track Michelle to Vermont, and they go to talk to her in Vermont. And she says, I haven't been to Pennsylvania since COVID. I was here in Vermont when the murders occurred, and I have to start working on funeral arrangements. They ask her, according to Wired's reporting, do you have any weapons? And she says, yes. She shows the troopers her weapons. They take down serial numbers. They document it, but no charges. Weapon isn't seized. Vermont is an open carry state, which will come into play later. Very important when there's another incident involving the Border Patrol agent.
But again, right here, Anna, I'm like,
yes,
there's so many ways in today's world of technology to find out if the statement was true. I haven't been to Pennsylvania since COVID because my watch will probably tell me where I've been. My phone will tell me where I've been. My car will tell me where I've been. There's so many simple checks on that. I don't understand how that couldn't have been done, especially with a Ring cam that said, allegedly sounded like mom and the screaming. So I just can't for the life of me understand why that lie, alleged lie, would not have been checked.
And Ashleigh, no one has been charged.
I know.
In the murders of this couple yet.
Yeah, it's very, very frustrating to me. Maybe what we're looking at here is that because they are so digitally brilliant, they were digitally brilliant with their tracks. Usually even brilliant people mess up somewhere, but who knows? Maybe they were just that smart and they knew that everything would track them, while they were in Pennsylvania, if allegedly they did this, and even knew that maybe a car would track them. So again, we are not talking about Joe Schmo here. We're talking about people who made it their living and learned way beyond, digital savvy than you and me.
And don't forget, there are multiple reports of them wrapping their phones in aluminum foil. It is
I still don't know if that works. Does it really work?
I haven't tried it myself, but
that just sounds like, aluminum foil hats to me, but I don't know. Maybe, well, let's try it and see if it works. I just can't imagine that it works.
Turning it off is just as good.
Not if you're Brian Koberger. No.
So again, I feel like a sense of, there are several open murder cases here. Several of them. Yeah. And this is one of them. So now on January 9th, police say that Michelle's trying to get the death certificates for her parents. The funeral is January 12th.
By the way, you know why most people want to get death certificates quickly, right? Some people just want to go ahead with the planning. Other people want the insurance fast. Mm-hmm. And you don't get nothing from insurance until you provide the certificates. And so that's always for me, that's always a big red flag, especially if they call and say, and I need 12 copies right away, because they've obviously had someone who's informed them that you need multiple copies of death certificates when there's a death, because you have to provide them to multiple different agencies. So I'm always like spidey senses there.
Plus, if she's their only child, presumably she is the beneficiary of the entire estate. I don't know that to be true,
but it sounds logical.
It's very logical that she would be in charge of all of this. So on the night of the funeral, this is interesting. Police obtain a search warrant and they go to the hotel in Pennsylvania where she is staying to get a DNA swab. A lot is going to happen in this hotel.
A lot. Weird. Again, weird stuff you're not expecting here. Like you're expecting, well, certainly they're going to search her and they're going to seize her phones and her computers and find out whatever that she was in Pennsylvania, and that would be the police activity at the Pennsylvania hotel. Nope.
No, there's more than that, actually. Far more interesting, I would say. So also staying at the hotel is Ziz Lasota.
Jack Ziz. Yep. Jack Ziz keeps popping up everywhere.
Right. Okay. So, but at the time, remember, no, Ziz is presumed dead. So who is this person who is described as a 6'2", 200-pound woman who, when confronted by police, goes completely limp on the floor? And, it's like a tactic you use during a protest, right? So cops are going to have a hard time carrying you out. And so they're saying that she's resisting arrest. They have a portable fingerprint reader with them. Remember what I said about the fingerprints from the protest?
Protest in the Bay Area against the rationalist movement.
Yes.
Shazam. And how bizarre is this, right, Anna? Like, that was on the West Coast. Mm-hmm. This is on the East Coast. And yet, that little portable fingerprinter was that good.
Mm-hmm. Yes, all of a sudden, Ziz is alive. Ziz is not dead. Ziz is alive.
Yep.
So again, but police do not seem to have the context of Curtis Lind attacked, right? They have an elderly couple in Pennsylvania murdered, but everything is in a different jurisdiction. So no one is connecting dots here. So,
but they're arrested. They're arrested not for Michelle's parents' murder. Again,
correct.
I kept thinking that's exactly what's going to happen here. They're going to the Pennsylvania hotel. It's the night right around the funeral. And no, they're arrested for, I don't know if it was trespass or disorderly conduct, but disorderly conduct and I think obstructing law enforcement, refusing to cooperate. And it's like Michelle is questioned there, but released. What?
Uh-huh.
Wait,
right.
What? Wait, hold it. There's so much they had right at their, fingertips, including fingerprints, and yet she's released.
It's quite baffling. It is. The whole thing is, and we don't have all the answers here. And maybe we will have answers in the next few weeks or months. I really do not know. But reportedly, police found in the car that they were using $40,000 in cash, a cell phone wrapped in tinfoil. Mm-hmm. Right. And a 9mm gun. But no one has told us if this 9mm gun matches anything used in any crime.
But when you're in Pennsylvania and the person who you've arrested has two parents who've just been murdered with a 9mm gun, and you find a 9mm gun, in her presence and vicinity, this is a no-brainer for me. Like, you would just instantly say, let's just check that. Let's find out if there's any connection with that. We have this mysterious death. And all these proclamations that she was nowhere to be, found near Pennsylvania. And yet she's in Pennsylvania now. Let's just check that. It's probably a good idea.
A lot of things we cannot answer. A lot of red flags here. It's if only someone could have, in each case, perhaps more closely focused on that crime. It almost feels like there were a lot of distractions at every point that they interact with police. Does that make any sense?
It does, except for the fact that, this would make more sense if this hotel, disorderly conduct and resisting arrest and obstruction, if that was, in a different state. It doesn't make as much sense to me that it's in the state where these two people were killed, mom and dad were killed. It is the daughter of mom and dad. There is a 9mm. There is this very aggressive behavior from daughter. That's where I sort of say, whoa, this one's an easy one. Maybe it just takes time. I get it. But it's too there's too many things too close together for that not to have been sort of a very quick solve, Mm-hmm. And by the way, she's released. She's questioned and released.
Yes.
What about just being held on the obstruction and the resistance and disorderly so that they could get their ducks in the row about who this girl really is? Because her parents their bodies aren't even cold.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They were literally just buried that morning.
Yeah.
Just that morning. And so Ziz is released on bail. So aside from some court dates for...
By the way, that one makes sense, okay? Because like they don't have a connection to this other unusual person that went limp and was 6'2", but a woman and 200 pounds, all that. That part makes much more sense because bail would be normal for resist and obstruction and, that kind of thing, disorderly. You wouldn't hold someone. I'm not sure that you'd even have a suspicion that that someone is connected to a murder, other than they're right there with the daughter who's got a 9mm and they're behaving weirdly. Like that to me is also that should have been looked at real quick.
But what about the fact that this person was declared dead and is not dead?
Is not dead. There's a lot going on there, right? I buried the lead there. Yeah. There's a lot going on there that cops should have said, wait, hold it. We've got them. Let's hold them while we deal,
Right. Okay. So aside from this, they're quiet for a while, the Zizians. They got a couple of court dates here and there, a couple of bench warrants here and there, but they're fairly quiet until.
It's a big until, Anna. It's a big until.
It's really horrible. January 17th, 2025. Curtis Lind, that sweet man who survived that vicious attack.
The eye and the samurai sword through the chest and tummy. He, thank God, was packing and survived and shot one of his attackers dead. We thought he, escaped from the horror. Not to be.
And the inciting incident for this would be preparing for trial because he was the witness and the victim here. All of a sudden...
Right, he's going to testify.
Yes, he's going to testify.
Those two others who were allegedly part of the attack that killed their friend because they're, the victim shot first. And he's going to be the one to basically sink them.
Yes, exactly. He was in grave danger. So much so that all of a sudden, and he's not far from his property, someone stabs him and slits his throat. He does not survive. He dies. Police have actually charged someone with his murder.
But it's another weird name out of the blue.
It's an entirely new person. Police charge a man named Maximilian Snyder, an Oxford-educated data scientist.
Head blown, mind blown. Wait, what? Oxford? A guy from Oxford is allegedly slitting the throat of this poor, already twice victimized landlord?
Where does this one come from? Okay, I want you to remember this person because when we get to the murder of the Border Patrol agent, a key figure in that had pulled a marriage license to marry Maximilian.
What do you know? He's connected suddenly.
Okay, so put a pin in that one.
Put a pin in it. Yeah, put a pin in it. Remember, Maximilian Snyder, Oxford educated, is the alleged knifeman that kills poor Curtis, who had already lost an eye and had already been stabbed.
Right. Now, I don't know if anyone's connecting the dots here, but 3 days after Curtis is murdered in California, 3 days, there's a traffic stop in Vermont.
Really close to the Canadian border. Oh, Canada comes back into this only because I'm Canadian.
Well, it is important because it's a Border Patrol agent who ends up in a shootout when he makes a traffic stop.
Which is why, Anna, most of us in the news thought this was border related, right? We figure, we've got southern border, we've got Canadian border, all sorts of border patrol stories out there and incursions. And so that really fell under the radar for a lot of news folks because it sounded like it was a border patrol issue. It was just a border agent because that happened to be the agent who was handy.
Oh, my goodness. So it is now January 20th, okay? And authorities receive a tip that there are two people with long black coats.
Cloaks and, weird looking.
Bullet belts and a visible handgun. Vermont, open carry state. Mm-hmm. So, you're not going to be picked up.
But when you're wearing a gun on the outside of black, long cloaks, you're going to arouse suspicion.
Well, certainly in this little village of Vermont, where skiers go.
Right, right up by the Canadian border. It was a long way up.
So, police are watching them because they can't quite figure out. They're wearing, N95 masks outside. They're skipping. It's
weirdo stuff. It's weirdo stuff.
It's just strange, right?
Yeah.
You can't quite make sense of what's going on here. But police are watching two people, Teresa Youngbloot and Felix Buckholt.
Two more names
to add to this growing list. Yep. Teresa filed to marry Maximilian.
The connection.
In the landowner's killing. Okay, so this will reveal itself later as this crime now escalates and reveals itself for what it is. So according to the Times-Union, just a little bit about Teresa before we get to the crime, because again, we all want to know who are these people, right? It's so confusing. So Teresa grew up in Washington State. Her parents noticed a big difference in their daughter a few months earlier. They even went to the police in Seattle. They said she was acting differently. She was lying about where she was going, who she was with. She stopped talking to all her old friends, shut down Facebook. She emailed her parents and said that she was moving in with a friend, changing her phone number, and they would never be able to reach her. So that's why they went to the police to file a missing persons report. And the police said to them, she's 20 years old. She's an adult.
She's allowed to do it. It's so heartbreaking, though, as a parent to hear that, because you are so hamstrung when your adult children fall victim to this stuff. You just don't have those rights, until you can prove that there's something untoward. It's just heartbreaking to hear that.
It really is. So now that you understand, and we're going to hear these types of stories over and over again for so many of these people. So the person that she's with, Felix Buckholt, apparently came to the U.S. from Germany. Now, this to me, Ashleigh, arrived in the U.S. hours before Richard and Rita were killed on New Year's Eve in Pennsylvania. Don't know anything more than that, but what do you make of that?
Well, with all the connections, it's hard not to speculate. But it's bad to speculate. It's just hard not to. And I feel as though that there's so much that's kept under the vest right now that will also present itself if that was connected, if the arrival is connected to the murders. But that's hard to do that because he's not charged with those murders. Right. He's not charged. But wow, another coincidence.
Right. Just timing is very interesting. Okay, now let's go back to Vermont. We know the two people who police are watching, okay? So Border Patrol agents try to make a traffic stop in Coventry, Vermont. 20 miles? That would be Ashleigh from the Canadian border?
Yeah, and again, this is Teresa Youngblood, who breaks my heart. Her parents lost her, and she said, "You'll never see me again. I'm moving in with a friend and taking the phone away," which is just so upsetting after she changed her behaviors. So she's one of the ones in that vehicle. And then the other one is, was it Max Snyder? Felix. Yeah, Felix, the one who's just arrived 3 days before, or just before the murders of the couple.
So there's a shootout. They get pulled over, and the border agent, David Maland, he is killed along with Felix in the shootout.
The German
who had arrived the hours before.
So yet again, a member involved in violence ends up dying. But this time a border patrol who just happened to be the authority. And, it wasn't a border issue so much as it was the border patrol happened to be the one that was in authority making this traffic stop because of the weird stuff that was going on at the hotel with the black cloaks and the strapped on guns and the skipping and the weirdness that obviously someone called the police and said something ain't right here. And it turned out that poor victim, that border patrol was the one that was dispatched to have a look. David Maland.
Just so tragic. So tragic. So Teresa, who is wounded in this, is arrested, and she has since pleaded not guilty to federal firearms charges. What's interesting here is no murder charges have been filed in the death of the Border Patrol agent Maland.
This is weird, too. The only thing I can think of, because, again, the whole felony murder thing, right? You were allegedly part of this awful shootout and behavior, and then somebody died as a result. Your pal and a border agent. And by the way, that's, if I'm not mistaken, federal law allows for death penalty if you kill a federal agent. But what if she's in the passenger seat, and, the victim, Felix Buckholt, is driving and shooting and driving and shooting, and she's screaming, "Stop, stop. This is where my beliefs stop. I don't want to be a part of this." And everything happens. Felix is shot, Border Patrol agent shot, and the forensics show that she wasn't shooting, she wasn't speeding, she wasn't escaping. It's possible that they're not at felony murder because they can't see that they can't find a felony that she might have been committing at the time.
Now, this is also perplexing here, but what a direct link here. Because now at this point, I think things are starting to bubble up where, if you step back, you see a bigger picture. So allegedly, the firearms recovered from the vehicle from the border shootout were allegedly purchased by Michelle Zajko. Remember, she's the one whose parents were killed.
Yep. So her name just keeps popping up.
And she owns land in Vermont, according to authorities, nearby this motel where these two were staying before the shootout with the Border Patrol. So, connect all of these dots.
Yeah, there's a lot of dots.
It isn't random.
Yeah, I'm dying on this Border Patrol agent, though, like how much investigation they're going to have to do to potentially, make a murder charge for the only survivor of the incident. And I just don't know that they're going to get there. I don't know what evidence they have, and they sure aren't sharing. Right.
And I think that's because everyone here, all the jurisdictions are trying to figure out what they have on their hands here, what they have. Okay. So finally, we get to the mother lode of all arrests, which just happened February 16th. Listen to the description. Police get a complaint about a group of people all dressed in black. They've parked their box trucks on private property in Maryland. They had apparently asked the owner if they could park there and use his property. And he's like, hell no. Right?
Not comfortable. It sounds a lot like what Curtis said. There's something weird about y'all. I need you gone.
Off my property. So police go to investigate. And what do they find? They find 3 people. Who are the 3 people? Jack Lasota.
Mm-hmm.
They find Michelle Zajko, whose parents were murdered.
Daughter of the murdered parents.
And then a third person named Daniel Blank. A new name here.
A new name.
These 3 are arrested for trespassing. Okay, police say that when they searched the trucks, they found ammunition, they found guns. The 3 suspects were charged with multiple counts of trespassing, obstructing, and hindering and possession of a handgun in a vehicle. Those are the charges that those 3. But think about this. You now have Michelle and Ziz finally in custody.
And connected all the way through. And I don't think that bail has been granted at this point. I'm trying to remember they were denied bail by a judge. A judge said flight risk, you think? Mm-hmm. But what's also interesting is still no murder charges, still no other. But I'm just, wait for the shoe to drop because I feel as though there's just so many connections here that it won't be as difficult, perhaps. Certainly for Michelle at this point, it would be hard for me not to see some connection there. I'm super curious about the border shootout and why there's not some connection to the murder charge there. But I'm not sure about this report. The reports go flying, right? Mm-hmm. But when this final thing happened, right, this final trespass, and box trucks, again, are part of it, parked on the landowner's land, there's these reports that the box trucks had lots of crazy surgical equipment in them, almost like they were little mini ERs. And that made me shudder because I wondered if they were performing any kind of, genital surgeries or anything, mastectomies, anything like that would help if someone truly believed they were trans. And again, I haven't confirmed those reports, but with everything else that's happening, it wouldn't be maybe surprising. It'd be shocking, but maybe not surprising.
Oh my God. I don't know. Whatever it is, I don't think they were up to any good for sure. Yeah. Based on, the reports and the activities over the last few years. I do
It's a
want to.
biggie.
It's a biggie.
biggie.
But I do want to talk about the third person who was arrested, Daniel Blank, because you're going to hear the same sad story from his parents. They said the last time they saw him was Thanksgiving 2022, and that he was being very secretive, and that apparently he had a great job with a startup in Ohio, and he quit his job. He abandoned his apartment, left all his belongings, and then his parents go to Ohio to file a missing persons report on him. So when he is arrested with the Zizians, then his parents do an interview with Open Vallejo, and they say that their son was brainwashed. They say that he graduated from Berkeley early with a double major in computer science and bioengineering, that he was so smart. He interned at Oracle. And his mother said also he had, partial vision in one eye, and that he also had mild autism. So
neurodivergency. Yeah. It's again, were they targeted or did they fall into something? Everything all the way along is heartbreaking. And then you hear about the crimes and your heartbreak breaks more maybe for the parents who lost kids to this than kids who may be guilty of these awful, awful murders and crimes. But there's so much more we have to learn. Like, this story's not over yet.
No, it's not. Not at all. There's so much we have to figure out. So as you've said, the three are being held. They cannot make bail. Ziz is going nowhere. But Ziz has been complaining to the judge that she can't get any vegan food. And she claims because of that, she can't think straight.
Well, I get hungry, and I guess I'm the same way.
Yes. But as you can see, there's going to be...
It's giving Brian Koberger vibes, though.
A lot of distractions, as I say. A lot of distractions. So... it's an amazing case. We're going to be watching this one on the podcast. And I know what we just talked about is really confusing. But at the end of the day, you have 3 murders in 3 states, 4 people dead, 6 in total if you include associates. This is very disturbing.
It's disturbing. And I do hope they get to the bottom of it for sure, because there are a lot of victims left in the wake.
So many. And all these parents whose children have been murdered, who the Border Patrol agent, the landowner, Curtis, the parents in Pennsylvania, carnage everywhere. Carnage. And
potentially more members of this group that we don't even know yet, whose parents are desperate to know where their kids are.
Yeah, there's one who's in hiding. The New York Post has reported that she's been in hiding, was a former member, and fears for her safety. So she could really be key to helping authorities unravel this. But before we go, Ashleigh, I want to talk to you about your new podcast, because I'm so excited. I saw on social media that you interviewed Wendy Williams.
I had an hour-long conversation with Wendy, which is really great for me, not just as a journalist, but also as a friend. I know Wendy. I have known her for over 10 years. I've been on her show multiple times. I was a fill-in host for her. We did charity events together. And so I know the old Wendy, and it was really good for me to spend an hour listening and understanding the new Wendy and making comparisons. And the things that she told me were really astounding. For starters, honestly, Anna, this surprised the heck out of me. She hasn't had those tests that we all thought happened last week. These were the tests that the news was huge. The headlines were huge. She's getting new cognitive tests to see if she still needs to stay in the conservatorship. That hasn't happened. And she says it's not happening anytime soon, has to go through a whole legal process. So that was pretty surprising. She said a few other things too about alcoholism. And then she also mentioned that she did not dislike the conservatorship in the beginning. She appreciated it. That was big for me. She appreciated the conservatorship in the beginning. Not now. So lots more. She said lots and lots more about her friends abandoning her family, her son, what the relationship is financially and otherwise. Really, really good stuff. And I'm dropping that late Wednesday night and Thursday morning this coming week. And it's really great to be able to hear her like this and make them our own judgment about whether she should or should not be incarcerated, because she sort of is.
I'm just curious, and not to reveal anything, because I know you've got so much amazing stuff you want to share with everyone. But what was your take, Ashleigh? What do you think? What do you think of her in the conversation as far as her cognitive abilities?
There's a lot I don't know. I will say that because I'm not into the most important conversations, which are with her doctors and with a judge. I'm not privy to that stuff. I felt like I was talking mostly to the old Wendy. She's always been cuckoo and fun, and she was cuckoo and fun. I felt like she sounded pretty dang clear to me. Moments where she veered off and it sounded a little confusing, but oh my gosh, is that how we lock people up? Because they're sometimes a little confusing and not during a whole hour, pretty lucid. That's troubling to me. I don't think anyone's constitutional freedom should be taken away because we might be a little loopy. I'm loopy half the time. And that was my big takeaway.
Oh my God, I wonder what Britney Spears thinks of all of this.
Oh, I talked to Wendy about Britney and about Kanye.
Oh, I can't wait. I'm so excited, Ashleigh.
It's drop dead serious, and I've got a really cool 6-part docuseries on there as well called Uncle Peter, my connection to a serial rapist who's worse than Cosby, Weinstein, Epstein, Diddy, and all their behaviors combined. I just happen to know him as Uncle Peter, grew up with him, and it is a wild story told from the inside, family members opening the vaults and telling me things. And so that amazing docuseries is sitting on Drop Dead Serious right now. The Wendy episode's coming out. Charlie Webster from Scamanda is out as well. Great conversation with Nancy Moscatello, the investigator from Scamanda. Good stuff on there. I hope everyone will check it out.
Absolutely, Ashleigh. Thank you so much. It has been such a pleasure to have you on. It means the world to us, really. Thank you.
Oh,
thank you.
You know how much I love you and what a fan I am of your work. Anna, thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely. You can find me at Anna G News. You can find all of our social media at My True Crime News. And you can find this podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe to our YouTube channel because that's where all your comments come in. I can't wait to hear your comments on this case. It's going to be a great, vibrant conversation. So until next time, this is True Crime News, the podcast, and I'm your host, Ana Garcia. See you next time.